coming up on the special Christmas episode of the New Money Habits podcast. When you're self-employed, as you know, there are feast and famine months, and there are seasons of feasting and there are seasons of famine, and it's things have been tighter financially than they have been in years. Hey there, budgeteers. Are you ready to unlock the power of each payday and take control of your finances like a boss? Introducing the Payday Power Planner from New Money Habits. This isn't your average budgeting tool. Oh no. With the Payday Power Planner, you'll harness the unique rhythm of your paychecks to supercharge your financial game. Say goodbye to the confusion of monthly budgets and hello to the clarity of every payday. You'll know exactly when money is coming in and when it's going out, giving you the edge you need to stay on top of your finances. But that's not all. With the Payday Power Planner, you'll easily spot whether you're rocking a surplus or facing a deficit. Armed with this knowledge, you'll make informed decisions that set you up for financial success. It's time to transform your relationship with money and create the new money habits you need to achieve financial freedom. Get your hands on the Payday Power Planner from New Money Habits today and start making every dollar count. Don't let financial stress hold you back. Create a better plan for your money and seize the power of your pay period and thrive with the Payday Power Planner. Visit newmoneyhabits.com now to grab your free copy and unleash your financial potential. 'Tis the season, Maria. 'Tis the season to be jolly.
Indeed. And
La, la,
yet.
la, 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 la. This particular episode, while we're recording it a few days before Christmas, will drop on Christmas. And so I'm really excited to just have a conversation.
Mm-hmm.
I just want to talk about Christmas.
Okay.
It's a Christmas episode. I don't know, there's Christmas in the air, even though we're here in Arizona and I'm originally from Buffalo, New York. So Christmas being in the air is a little bit different. And I imagine it's similar for you being from Illinois.
Yeah.
Right? It doesn't have that same crisp scent in the air, but there's still just the spirit of Christmas in the air. And so I wanted to talk a little bit about the season of perpetual hope and gifts, and some of the greatest gifts we'll ever receive and can share with others, and maybe just kind of wrap it around this idea of you and I, and of course our partner Mike, who I can't get on the podcast nearly as often as I'd like for our listeners to hear his voice, but we often talk about aligning your spending with your values. And so I thought we could have a conversation about values and about Christmas and just about this particular season. So no particular format here other than to say want to talk about those things, and maybe just kind of kick it off by asking you hopefully a softball question about like what are some of your favorite Christmas traditions, or what are some of the things you value the most this time of year?
Well, I'm going to answer your first question first. One of our favorite traditions. So I'll give you some backstory. When I think it was my daughter was 1. My first daughter was 1, and we moved away from family entirely. And so we moved away right before Christmas. And then we went back and visited for like 2 months later for Christmas. And each year after that, sometimes we'd go and visit and sometimes we would not. And we wanted to create a tradition for our kids that we could kind of carry with us no matter where we went, just in case we were traveling. So even when we did go back, you mentioned that we were from Illinois, but my family is about 2 hours away from my husband's family. And so we would be like at one family on Christmas Eve, and then we'd hop in the car on Christmas morning and drive to the next one. And so we had to have some tradition that was easily carried through. And it was just to find a Christmas movie that was speaking to the heart of what Christmas is actually about. And when they were little, it was, it was just, some of it was just kind of cheesy stuff. As I got a little bit older, it could be a little bit deeper. But it was to have a movie. We always went to mass on Christmas Eve every single year. That's how actually what we did when we grew up too. I used to sing and everything for Christmas Eve mass. Did you know that about me? Probably
I
not.
did not know that about
Yeah.
I'm gonna
Um,
have to get a little bit of a sample.
Oh, I didn't say I could sing very well, but my family's very musical, and so I just kind of we're like the Von Trapp family. I just kind of went along with it. But that's a story for another day. I think that was always very nostalgic for me. So we always go on Christmas Eve, and then we follow it up by going home. We usually have some sort of dinner together. If we were traveling with other family, we would have that with them as well. But when we're here, we honestly just usually just have the six of us now. That our family's a little bit bigger. And we have dinner, and then we have our movie, and we always have hot chocolate with that movie. Like that's one of the things that the kids love to
Mm,
do. And we exchange pajamas. We always get a new set of
yeah.
pajamas every year, for everybody. So that's the one gift that they're able to open. And it's gotten to the point where they know obviously what's in there, but they don't know what it looks like. So that's one of our favorite ones, just because it's something that, like I said, whether we've been traveling in a car, because sometimes we've been in an actual car during that time, or we're just, here by ourselves, and we've always maintained that. So,
Yeah. That's awesome. Thank you for sharing
mm,
that. I like that a
yeah,
lot. It reminds me that the Villa family, at least the Phoenix Villa family, does not have established traditions.
yeah,
Like even though my kids are now 14 and 10, and we've had plenty of years to figure out what are we doing. Um, there's no there's no kind of set this always happens,
mm-hmm.
but uh, this time of year there are certain things that always transpire. This particular year, I think we've already watched the movie Elf about 7 times.
Yeah.
It is just it is it's the first one, and again, not in a traditional sense of like we're going to make it the first one. It's all like, "Hey, let's watch a Christmas movie." Elf. Like
Hmm. Just
everybody.
happens naturally.
Yep. Yep. And so, I mean, of course there's the putting up and trimming of the tree, and that happens. But this particular year, um things were different, and I'll get into more of the reasons why they were different in a little bit. But normally we like to put the tree up, if possible, like the weekend after Thanksgiving,
Hmm.
right? Or
Same
maybe
here.
even the Friday after. Yeah.
Hmm.
And the tree just went up. Like we're recording on December 23rd, and the tree has been up maybe 4 days. So
Mm-hmm.
it's been a rough holiday season, and like I said, I'll get into more of that in a moment. But yeah, we don't really have like set traditions, but there's just some of those things that find their way into the routine each and every holiday season, just because they bring us great joy.
Yeah.
So
And also certain members of the family take on certain roles, I think. At least that's how it has been in our family. And it just happens naturally. And I think the reason I'm bringing it up is because it tends to lean into whatever gifts we have. So I'll give you an example. You mentioned, trimming the tree.
mhm.
When we grew up, we got to always trim the tree with my dad. It was on a Monday evening. My mom had a women's meeting that she would go to. And so he'd pick one of those
Hmm.
Mondays, and we would always trim the tree with him. And that was just always really fun. And I don't know if if it's because I no longer want to do it myself, or I just tell myself it's so that my kids can have the same tradition that I had. But that's for my husband and my kids to do at this point. I will say, growing up, we always had real trees. Now we have artificial ones. And
Mm,
so I have to fluff the tree because no one else is willing to do that. And I'm the only one who I think I have an eye for it, and it would drive me nuts to not have it fluffed. So I kind of take that on.
yeah.
But in terms of actually decorating stuff, they do all that. I do all of the gift wrapping because that's something that brings me joy. Like
Mm,
I can I'll talk to you about this a little bit later today too, but the idea of like being able to give of yourself during this season. And
yeah.
we've kind of commercialized things so much that there are times when I feel like I'm wrapping a gift that doesn't even say anything about me and how I relate to the person that it's for. But my gift is being able to make the outside of that gift beautiful. And so I will spend so much time actually making these gifts beautiful. And so, I mean, I'm talking weeks to months of wrapping before Christmas starts. And so that's been interesting. And then my husband, he always takes the outside lights, you know. And so the reason I bring this up because as I'm thinking about part of what is so heavy for you this season, I'm realizing that we kind of naturally fall into some of these roles. And
Mm.
I think that when we have Christmas, whatever the shift is, if we have someone who we've lost, or if someone like in my family, there's someone who's not speaking to us right now, like you start to see those things become a lot more, I don't know, poignant for us because there were roles specifically dedicated to that person, whether or not it was intentional. So anyway, I don't know where that came from, but just wanted to share that as it
But,
surfaced for me.
and hey there, budgeteers. You know, good news can only be good news if there's bad news. So, what's the bad news? The bad news is you and I have a deadly disease called sin, and this disease causes us to rebel and disobey God. See, God is holy, righteous, and just, and He cannot be in the presence of sin. So, this horrible disease of ours separates us from the God who created us. And the bad news gets worse. There isn't anything you or I can do to make ourselves right with God. We are dead in our sins and on our way to an eternity separated from God. But that's not God's will for us. See, for God so loved the world that He gave His only begotten Son, that whoever believes in Him should not perish but have everlasting life. God did what only God could do. He made a way for us to be reconciled to Him through Jesus Christ. Jesus came into the world to save sinners like you and me. While we were still sinners, storing up God's anger against us for our rebellion and disobedience, Christ died for us. Jesus took the punishment that you and I deserve and have earned. Jesus is the substitute for your punishment and mine. Now, isn't that some good news? The word gospel means good news. The gospel of Jesus Christ is that you and I broke God's law and Jesus paid the fine. When we place our faith and trust in Jesus, we get to experience God's grace and mercy. Our gratitude should turn us from our rebellious and disobedient sin toward God, seeking after Him and His righteousness. When we do, God gives us a new heart and a new mind. Praise God for His goodness, and remember, God loves, humans sin, Jesus saves.
And as I said at the top, just so excited just to have a conversation about, this time of year and to hopefully, make us a little bit more relatable to our listeners, but also just share a little bit of, the inner workings and
of our
and
brains.
hopefully a little bit of,
God help them all. Okay.
right.
So you were saying that your tree has been up for about 4 days.
Yeah. And so, it's just been a different, it's been a different holiday season. I also mentioned earlier that I want to talk about like what do we value, because we talk about often how we align the way we spend our money to our values and that sort of thing. But one of my biggest values is truth, and I prioritize truth over anything and everything, and it always makes me want to be honest and transparent. Sometimes I have to remember that people don't want the whole story, right? Even if I want to give them the
Yeah.
whole story. But what's made this holiday season a little bit tough, and I imagine 99% of our listeners can relate, and that is, the loss of a loved one. We entered into 2024 with my wife's father was diagnosed with a terminal illness. We knew it was going to take his life. It was just a matter of when, not if. And so that happened the weekend after, or maybe the Tuesday after Thanksgiving. Now the days are all blending together, right? So Thanksgiving
Understandably.
happened. she had a conversation with him on that day. In fact, that ended up being the last conversation she had with him. And then like Sunday, Monday, Tuesday of the following week, he passed. And that's just kind of threw the whole holiday season and then this family into a whirlwind of craziness from a impromptu trip to Las Vegas to tend to my mother-in-law's needs and help make final arrangements and that sort of thing. And so the grieving process starts. And anybody who's familiar with grieving, it's not a linear process. You're not going to be angry first and
Right.
then or denial in first and angry next. You're going to be all over the place. And so it's the loss of a loved one has hit this family pretty hard. Illness is another one where just this family does not get sick often, but over the last 2-3 weeks, it was strep throat from my wife. She gave me strep throat. My son got the flu. Now my wife has the flu. I'm on my second round of strep throat. Like what is going on? And to kind of like pile on, there's the when you're self-employed, as there are feast and famine months, and there are seasons of feasting and there are seasons of famine, and it's things have been tighter financially than they have been in years. And so I share that because I value truth and I like to be transparent, but I also share it in hopes to bring our listeners hope, because you start to hear these things. Okay, the loss of a loved one, our health is under attack, our finances are under attack. And I got to tell you, I wake up every morning with a peace that surpasses all understanding, with a joy that I listened to my wife talk to her mother on a daily basis now. And that hasn't always been the case, and that's a different story for a different day. But they're talking on a daily basis, and tears have given way to laughter. It's got me choked up. The tears have made way for laughter and reminiscing on the good things. And the anger shows up too, right? Mom will be like, I can't believe he did this and he left me. But then that gives away to some story that brings a little levity and joy. And so I'm joyful. When I hear those moments, I'm joyful. And I just rejoice, like, oh, okay. Like even in the hard things, we can find ways to be joyful. And like I said, a peace that surpasses understanding, and a comfort that it's only a season. See, I've been through these seasons before, so I know my God. I know how consistent he is. He's the same yesterday, today, and forever. He has provided. This family has not gone without a meal. I have not gone a month without being able to pay the mortgage, no matter how tight things have gotten financially and how chaotic things have been. I know that my Lord and Savior is in the boat. And so I see the storm. I see it. And waves and the wind, it's crashing down, and it's all just, it wants to be scary, and the world would tell me like, oh dude, you're in a bad way. I'm like, yeah. My Savior's right here in the boat. What do I have to be worried about? So
Wow.
yeah, heavy season. Heavy season.
Yeah. And yet hopeful.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, sorry. I didn't, like, I knew I was going to share that, but I didn't realize just how much weight that was going to bring to the conversation. My apologies.
There's no need to apologize for that. I mean, I think that that's the kind of stuff that's super important. You know, you mentioned one of your main values, and this isn't. It's interesting because this is not one of the things that I've always said was one of my main values. But right around this time of year, have you ever done the whole? Not I've kind of ditched the whole idea of resolutions, just so you know. And maybe we could talk about this next week. But the idea of finding a word instead, like the word of the year. I don't remember who made that
I
popular,
maybe, but
who
refresh my
initiated it.
memory.
Just I'm probably gonna make this totally. I'm gonna botch it, but the telephone game where you hear one thing and then the next and the next. I'm like way down the telephone line right now in terms of what this actually is supposed to be. So don't take
Oh,
it
okay.
take it with a grain of salt. But I think it's the idea that instead of setting resolutions, you kind of choose a word to kind of focus on for that year, and it can be some people just say like strength or I don't know there are some good ones out there, but like this last year for me was surrender, and just being
Okay.
able to in any moment just be able to just surrender. And it doesn't mean not do anything, it just means surrender to God. And I don't know if it was you or Cody on my other podcast that I talked to you about it,
Mhm.
but I feel like I had this conversation with somebody, so I won't go into any of that. But this year, as I was praying about it, connection came to me. And I mean it was so just like in my face, and I can't even ignore that. Like that has to be what my focus is this next year. And what I love about it is that it has so many levels to it. It's connection to Jesus, it's connection to my husband, connection to my kids, connection to other people, and in a way that's real, like actually real life connection, not the social media junk that's really not connecting at all. And
Right.
so anyway, as you were talking, it reminds me that that's why we're having conversations like this, that we need to have connection. And so the fact that you feel the need to apologize is almost laughable, because obviously you needed to have a conversation and bring it to
Right.
the table. And it doesn't matter how heavy or light that is. But that's one of the things that I really want to take into next year for sure.
I like that. Yes, I'm gonna want to. I'm trying to resist the urge to jump in on the I too don't believe in resolutions,
Mm-hmm.
but we will save that conversation for
Yeah.
next week,
Yeah.
because next week is the new year and it will work out perfectly. So
Okay.
we'll leave that cliffhanger out there for our listeners, and they'll come back next week and get the New Year's episode. But so at the top, I asked about traditions and asked about values, and then I shared mine. But what are some of the things you value the most this time of year?
Time with family.
Hmm.
I also value, you mentioned gift giving, and I kind of alluded to this, but I value being able to actually give of ourselves during this year. And I briefly spoke with you before we hit record, but I can tell you this has been something that I kind of have been on a soapbox about. We made some cookies at my sister's yesterday, and I took at least 25 to 30 minutes throughout the day just ranting about this one thing. And it wasn't in a row, it wasn't 25 minutes in a row, but throughout the
Oh,
day,
okay.
I was like, oh, and also, oh, and this. And they're just like, oh my gosh. But then I said, tell
Let me get
me,
back up on my
right? And
soapbox
that's
for a moment.
exactly how I would lead into it. By the way, I'm like, okay, so I'm gonna get back on there for just a second. But it's this idea that even though we logically know, and I say we, this is not everybody in society. I know that I'm not speaking for everyone, but I actually think I'm speaking for a lot more people than maybe are happy to admit. When I was growing up, and now I'm granted I'm in my mid 40s, but when I was growing up, we didn't have a lot. I mean, we would receive actually quite a bit. My parents spoil us too much at Christmas time. But outside of that, it really was all about the real meaning of Christmas when we were growing up.
Hmm.
And even when we gave gifts, we gave things that either we made ourselves or that used the talents and gifts that we have in order to pass those on. Or if we were buying something, it was basically like okay, I'm thinking about my sister. She likes X, Y, and Z, and so I'm gonna go and get this for her. And it made it more exciting to give to them. I don't know about you, but our family does, like, we have a gift exchange for the siblings, the older siblings, because quite frankly, and I know you know this because you've got some siblings too, and I know you don't buy for all your siblings, but it just
Mhm.
becomes too expensive to buy for everybody. That's even if you wanted to, it logistically it gets too expensive. And so they've done a gift exchange, and even among my kids, like I have a sister-in-law who loves to spoil my children, so she'll ask for a gift list. She'll ask for a wish list. And so they'll write out these things. And probably 2, 3 years ago, she would get a head start on that, and she was like, oh, I want to get this, and I want to get this, and I want to get this. And then my husband would fill in the gaps for things like, oh, we want to get this, and then there's other people. And by the time the year was over, like my kids would have everything on their wish list. And I was like, it's spoiling them, because then like the next year, if they got 95%, so we set a precedent, right? So then if they get
Yep.
90 or 95% of what was on their wish list, instead of being overly grateful for the 95%, there was that let a little bit of a letdown for not getting that 5 to 10%. And it's not to say that my kids are spoiled brats. It's just human nature. And I think that it's not just my children. I think it's us adults as well. I think society writ large is a little bit like this, where we have so many abundant blessings that on the pieces that we don't have, we start shaking our fists and going, why don't we have those things?
Mm.
And I long for a time when it's more, I don't know if simplistic is the right word, less consumeristic is the right word. I don't really know the right description, but I long for a time where we can use the talents and gifts that God has given us in order to bless the people who are with us. And it's not just a charitable blessing that I'm talking about. I mean, because we've talked about that as well, where you have a line item in your budget where you're like, oh, I want to make sure I give this amount. It's not even just
Mhm.
about that. Like, I think that feels a lot like checking a box. Like, well, I need to do this to be the good steward, and now I'm going to go and do this other stuff, and it just feels very unaligned, and I don't like
Yep.
that anymore. I'll tell you this quick story. My 5-year-old, I told this to my mom. I said, here's why I know that it's innate to us. My 5-year-old, she has not yet been ruined. We're working really hard to ruin her, but
Yep.
she hasn't been ruined yet. And the cousins, so I told you the siblings do a gift exchange. Well, so do the cousins. And this 5-year-old had had a conversation with her older cousin. Now remember, she's 5, her older cousin's 13. There's not a lot that they have in common, right? It's not like they're 5 and 7. But she had a full on conversation with my 13-year-old niece, unbeknownst to me. This was on Thanksgiving. We got in the car to drive home, and she said, hey, Mom, I found out that Maddie loves cows. Okay. Like they named her Maddie Moo. So it might be,
Oh, okay.
so she loves cows. I found out that she loves cows. And Mom, she told me that she needs some socks. So for Christmas, I want to buy her cow socks. Now, that seems like such a silly little story, but it told me that she had to have a conversation. She had to connect with somebody. She had to learn what that person likes. She had to find out what that person needs. And then in her 5-year-old little mind, she put it together and said, I want to give that to that person. Nowhere was on a list cow socks. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Mhm.
it's
Right.
totally different. Now, I told my mom, I said, because she has that innate desire, I actually believe we're born with this. I don't believe that it has to be taught to children. I think the opposite is happening. I think we're teaching them out of that innate desire. And that saddens
Mm.
me, if I'm being quite honest. And so I think I've decided that I want to just do what I can to kind of shift some of those habits, because that's all it is. It's just bad habits at this point. Um,
Yep.
and so I would like to do what I can to kind of shift that a little bit more and see what we can do. I don't know.
I Hey there, budgeteers. It's a brand new year, and that means it's time for new habits, starting with your money. Take charge of your finances in 2025 with New Money Habits Financial Coaching. This isn't your typical financial advice. New Money Habits is all about giving you the knowledge, tools, and support to make confident money moves and build a rock solid financial foundation. Here's the deal, we're offering a free discovery session to kick off your journey to financial freedom. That's right, no strings attached. In this session, one of our expert coaches will help you to identify your financial goals and create a better plan for your money. We'll help you master your money mindset, sharpen your money management skills, and keep you accountable every step of the way. Make 2025 the year you say goodbye to financial stress and hello to the freedom you've been dreaming about. Schedule your free discovery session today and start creating the new money habits you need to achieve financial freedom. I hear you, because I'm frustrated by the same thing you're frustrated by, which is that consumerism. What a great story, by the way. Thank you.
Yeah.
Because so often, like you said, we are just kind of going through the motions. People put together a list, then that list gets shared around, and so like divide and conquer. Versus your daughter here, like you said, making a connection, learning, putting things together, and then what a thoughtful gift.
Yeah.
What a, like the thoughtfulness of when her cousin opens that gift, there's going to be a different reaction.
Right.
Like like, well,
She might be
okay,
confused at first.
Yeah.
Because we talk, like we just have these conversations, right? And she probably doesn't even remember she told her that. And so she might be confused, like, why is she giving me cow socks? But I do believe you and say and agree with you that when we tell her the story of how that came about, it is going to be one of those more memorable gifts for her. And I think that even though she's 13, she'll probably wear these socks with cows on them with some pride.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I also agree that we, in our society, I'm not a very cultured individual. I don't know how other cultures do things, but I know how we do things here in the States, and we kind of like beat the creativity out of our children.
Mm-hmm.
Like they're so creative, they're so thoughtful, and they have these big ideas, and through traditional schooling and just other methods, we just beat this creativity right out of them to conform to the just give me a list and I'll try to get something that's on your list, or I'll just send you money, or all of the
Well, and I think it also creates a sense of entitlement, and that drives me insane. That just entitlement in general drives me insane.
Mm-hmm.
And I heard this story. I don't remember who shared it though, but it was basically someone said, "Oh yeah, I had some extra money and I wanted to be able to gift something to my nieces and my nephews, and so I asked them what they might like, and they said, you know what." We're in school now, like it was probably high school, college age, and things are just really expensive. So we could really just use some money. I'll send you my Venmo handle. Like what? And so this guy said, whoa, 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 whoa. Like, I'm not going to send you money via Venmo. Like, if I want to gift something to you, I don't even mind if it's monetary. Like, I don't even buy a gift card or something, but I don't want to just send you money via Venmo. And I chuckled a little bit, but also, had a little bit of a broken heart because it really does say, well, I'm entitled to this. Like you're expecting a gift from somebody, and it just takes away the joy for the giver, I think, in that case.
Yeah. I do this thing every year for my birthday where I invite everybody over. Let's get together for my birthday. And I've realized over the last few years, like everybody wants to know, like, oh, gift ideas. I'm like, guys, I'm not inviting you over to my home for you to give me gifts, because one of the other things I value a ton, like you had said, is quality time. actually, of the 5 love languages, that's my number one, quality time. I could not care less if you brought a gift with you. I just want you to come over and hang out, and let's eat some good food together. Let's play hacky sack. Yes, at 45 years old, I still play hacky sack with my buds
Nice.
because I'd much rather do that. Like, I don't care. I don't care. Finally, I think they stopped asking, and now I get really cool, thoughtful gifts. I used to get Amazon gift cards, and now I get really cool T-shirts. This past birthday, like I got like 3 or 4 different Jesus related T-shirts,
Oh,
whether it
cool.
says like redeemed on it or
Nice.
whatever, and it's all like, see, stop asking me, and I'm very thankful for those gifts because those were incredibly thoughtful. But the point being, I don't care about any of that. Like, let's just get together. I'm an experience guy over like
Material.
tangible material.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'd much rather, like, when my mom comes into town, not that she comes into town for the holidays anymore. She comes in a different time of year, but she used to come in at the holidays, and like that one day where I know she and the kids are going to just tear apart the kitchen, making homemade pasta and cookies and all that stuff. Like, I shouldn't be eating any of it, but the experience, right? The experience of the time together and the memories made and
Yep.
all of those different things is just something that I value a lot. Is just, let's spend some time together.
Yeah.
Even if it means watching the same movie 7 times over again.
Hey, yeah,
Don't care.
Elf. I'll bet it's Elf.
Yep. There seems to be kind of a like a not that we've done this by design, but it pretty much goes Elf followed by Jim Carrey's How the Grinch Stole Christmas. Then you got to hit up Santa Claus 1 and 2. 3 is for the birds. I'm sorry if you're a fan of Santa Claus 3. My apologies to anybody out there who's all like, no, that's like one of the best ones. What's up with Frost? I don't know. Like, what are we doing? He's trying to steal the North Pole.
I'd be lying if I said I had any idea of any of it. I don't know that I've ever even seen 3, maybe not even 2, to be fully transparent.
Yeah, the kids, like, they can take or leave 2. There's very specific scenes in the Santa Claus 2 that I just that totally do it for me. Like, they're so magical. If you remember, like, I don't know if you're very familiar with the second Santa Claus. Okay. Well, I'm going to tell the story anyway, or I'm going to describe the scene anyway. There's a scene where Tim Allen, he's been desantified, right? So he's lost all the weight, he's lost the beard, and he goes to this the teacher's Christmas, the faculty Christmas party with his son's principal.
Okay.
And it's a dud of a party, and he uses his magic to give gifts. So it's a Secret Santa, but it's a Secret Santa of every person's prized possession gift from like when they were children. So like for one guy it's toss across, and for another it's like an easy bake oven, and for another it's rock'em sock'em robots, and so all these nostalgic gifts, and it's just like, it's awesome.
That speaks specifically to the person.
Yeah,
I'm telling you. What? Yes, I think I'm onto something. That's all I'm saying.
See, I knew you would pick up on the tie-in there. The tie-in was gift-giving that actually means something. No, that was just a happy coincidence there.
Yeah. Anyway, we've done talked 30 minutes.
Yeah. Oh, God. You're the only one that ever keeps time. Right?
I just looked down. I was like, oh, it's already been half an hour. That's great.
All right. Well, then let's wrap this up in a fun way. I gave you not that that's my favorite Christmas.
Oh, you're going to ask me that.
Movie scene. Okay, I'll give you some time to think about it, because I'll give you my favorite. While I like that one from Santa Claus 2, here's my favorite Christmas movie scene. it brings me to tears every time because, yes, I'm a big fire truck like that. Miracle on 34th Street, the 1990s version. There's a scene where the kids are visiting with Santa and there's a deaf child. And the mother's all like, you don't have to talk to her. She's deaf. She just wanted to see you. So the child sits on Santa's lap and they take a few moments to build the suspense. And he kind of shifts her and he starts speaking to her in sign language. And I'm just like, all right, I've lost it. I'm Mr. Waterworks over here.
I love it.
There we go.
Okay. So here's the problem, our children, my children, and my husband, actually, my fifth child, I kid, don't like any of the traditional Christmas movies that I liked, like the old ones.
Okay.
And so I've kind of been relegated to some of the newer ones. Now, granted, I also laugh at some of the stuff on Elf and that kind of thing, but I've never really, like, that one is just a funny one. It never really spoke to my soul. But one of the most recent ones that I've seen that actually did, and I will share this with you, is The Star. Have you seen that cartoon?
Is that the animated?
Yes.
That's the animated one, right?
Yep, which is why I set it up the way that I did. Yes, because again, I have to do what some of the stuff that they're looking for. But yeah, we actually chose that as our traditional Christmas movie last year and have watched it about 2 or 3 times this year already. And it's just, I don't know how much you know about it. Yes, it sets up the nativity, but I'll just say that I think the reasons it's one of my favorites now is because of the message that's behind it. And for those of you who've not seen it, it's basically from the viewpoint of the donkey that Mary rode on the way to Bethlehem. And what was so interesting about it is she kept thinking, I'm going to just, there's a doorbell ring. I'm sorry about that.
It's all good.
I was waiting for the
package this Christmas season.
I was waiting for the dog to go crazy. She hasn't done that yet. So, okay, I'll just finish this and you can wrap up. What I like so much about it is that in the beginning of this movie, they set the donkey up as somebody who sees what they call the royal caravan that comes through. And the royal caravan carries the king of the time. And he has always wanted to be part of that royal caravan. And that becomes his dream until he sees this star and he decides to follow the star instead. Following that star ultimately lands him to be in the donkey that Mary rode. And it's not until Jesus is born that he realizes that he gave up going with the royal caravan to actually carry a king. And it's just, what's so beautiful about all of it is the insignificance of this donkey, and how we also can seem to be very insignificant in this life sometimes. But if we are willing to follow the star, follow the thing that God has put in our path, and just trust in him, that we will actually be doing way more than what we thought we had been set out to do.
What a beautiful tie to the reason I wanted to do this particular episode differently. Right? It's Christmas. It's the season of perpetual hope, and it brings great significance to us all. It gives us all a purpose. We all have a purpose on this planet. And sometimes we may feel that, sometimes we may not. Sometimes it might be clear as day, and sometimes it might be as clear as mud. And so just being able to share what we've been able to share, and then to tie it up with, here you have this seemingly insignificant donkey doing something very significant, just like this podcast. It's, in the grand scheme of things, fairly insignificant, but I hope that this episode brings significant meaning and significant hope to some of its listeners, because Christmas, for somebody who did not grow up in a Christian home and did not realize that December 25th was the celebration of the birth of Jesus Christ until I was in my 20s, it's something that 20 years later, I don't take for granted, or I try not to, because I'm certainly not perfect at not taking things for granted. That was like a lot of knots, but
The
I
quadruple
try not
negative.
to take it for, yeah, I try not to take this time of year for granted. And I'll use the cheesy line, Jesus is the reason for the season, right? But we got the greatest gift ever given. And we all at this point probably know it wasn't truly December 25th that it happened, but that's not the point. The point is on December 25th, we take a moment to reflect on the greatest gift ever given, and that is the Savior of the entire planet. God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whoever believe in him shall not perish but have everlasting life. And part of that everlasting life, I believe, starts the moment you enter into a relationship with Jesus Christ, because then you get the Holy Spirit, which brings that peace that surpasses all understanding, the rejoice in all things, and the comfort to get through even the hardest of times. And so that's my hope for our listeners this Christmas season, is that you are filled with the greatest gift ever given.
Beautifully stated. Thank you for allowing me to have this conversation with you today.
Thank you for being a part of it.
My pleasure.
And we'll talk again next week.
Sounds good.
That does it for this episode of the New Money Habits podcast. Remember, if you have any questions, make sure to hit us up on social at New Money Habits and follow us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Please consider leaving a 5-star rating and review to help us spread this message of hope to people looking for a better plan for their money.